Hello everyone, my name is Neetu Dalal. Welcome back to my YouTube channel called Edu Classes, where we watch, learn, and excel. In today's video, we are going to cover chapter 7, part 2, which is social influence and group processes. In part 1, we've already covered introduction and nature and formation of groups, and today we are going to cover from types of group, right? So the first topic is type of groups. Now, groups differ in many respects. Some have a large number of group members, some are small, some are short lived and remain together for many years. Some are highly organized and others are informally organized. People may belong to different types of groups. So basically, what they are saying is that we in our life we find different kinds of group, or we can be a part of different types of group. Jaise, there are groups which have large number of members, like a country. या फिर ऐसे भी ग्रुप्स होते हैं जहाँ पे कम लोग होते हैं जैसे कि एक फैमिली में. Then some groups are very short lived, right? Like for example, if it's a committee to choose the next captain of the cricket team, that committee will be a group which will live for very short period of time, because once they've chosen the captain, the committee will dissolve. Now there are some groups which remain together for years, like a religious group, and some are highly organized, like army, police. These are all groups or organizations which are very, very organized and they have a very clear structure. Others are informally organized, like audience of a movie theater or spectators of a match. And we as people belong to multiple groups at the same time. Now, all the types that we will study in this chapter are listed below, and there are three. One is primary and secondary groups. Then we have formal and informal groups, in group and out group. So these are the three that we will be covering in this particular chapter for your course. Now, first one is primary and secondary group. So they say that a major difference between primary and secondary group is that primary groups are pre-existing formations which are usually given to the individual, whereas secondary groups are those which the individual joins by choice. So what this says simply is that कुछ ऐसे ग्रुप्स होते हैं जिनको चूज करने की आपके पास चॉइस नहीं होती है, जैसे कि your family, your religion, your country, your caste. So all of this which pre-exists when you're born becomes a part of your primary group, and everything else that you will choose to be a part of in your life will be called your secondary group. So for example, if you decided to join a musical band, so this group will be a secondary group, whereas your family, your religion, your caste will be a primary group. So therefore, family, caste, and religion are primary groups, whereas membership of a political party is an example of secondary group, just what we've discussed right now. Now, in a primary group, there is face-to-face interaction. Members have close physical proximity. Of course, because primary group कौन है? आपकी family. तो आपका face-to-face interaction ज़्यादा होगा. आपकी ज़्यादा physical proximity होगी because आप एक घर में रह रहे हैं. And आपका, you will also share a much stronger bond, right? Now, प्राइमरी ग्रुप्स आपकी लाइफ में एक बहुत ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंस प्लेस भी होल्ड करते हैं बिकॉज दे अफेक्ट योर अपब्रिंगिंग, राइट? सो व्हेन यू आर डेवलपिंग और व्हेन यू आर गोइंग थ्रू योर स्टेजेस व्हिच आर इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर यू एज अ पर्सन, you are a part of family and it does impact your development, right? So your values, your ideals, your morals, all of these are affected by the family that you are a part of. In contrast to this, secondary groups are those where relationship among members are more impersonal. Secondary groups में आपका कभी भी relationship personal नहीं होता है. It's a little, there's a little distance between you and the other member. This is indirect and less frequent, right? आप बहुत कम, मतलब ऐसा नहीं है आप रोज नहीं मिलोगी, like you meet a family member. So there is less frequency. In primary groups, boundaries are less permeable. यानी आप चूज नहीं कर सकते हो to become a part of a primary group, or you cannot, enter or exit a group very often in a primary group setup. But in a secondary group, this membrane or this boundary of the group is very permeable, meaning you can choose to join a group, leave a group, and then join another, right? So we have that kind of a choice in secondary group, which is not there in primary group. Then we come on to formal and informal groups, right? So the distinction here is that informal groups are the ones which are based on certain rules, certain norms, or which have been made by a certain law, and these are made for a purpose, right? So they are formal in structure. Informal groups are the ones which don't have a clear structure, where there's no boundary between the roles of people, and they are not made on law or rules as such. So let's read what's written. These groups differ in the degree to which the functions of the group are stated explicitly and formally, right? So of course formal group में जो function होगा वो बहुत clear cut mentioned होगा और बहुत formal structure होगा इस group का. The function of a formal group are explicitly stated as in case of an office organization. अगर आप किसी office organization को देखोगे तो वो एक formal setup है. The roles to be performed by group members are also stated very clearly, right? So you know if it is a manager, unka kya kaam hai, if it is a team leader, unka kya kaam hai. So this structure is very clear cut, right? Formation of formal groups is always based on some rule, some law, or some definite, roles, right? So there is a purpose behind a formal group. And there are a set of norms which help in establishing order. So there's always a guidebook by which you follow a formal group. But some of the example of this could be a government department, a university setup, a college, right? All of these are examples of a formal group. You become a part of a university, so that becomes your formal group. On the other hand, the formation of informal group is not based on rules or laws, and there is close relationship among members. मतलब इनफॉर्मल ग्रुप में कोई ऐसा लॉ या रूल पे ग्रुप नहीं बनता है और जो लोगों के बीच में रिलेशनशिप है वो काफी पर्सनल होगा इन कंपैरिजन टू अ फॉर्मल ग्रुप. जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल इफ टुडे आई डिसाइड दैट ओके विद दीस 4 ऑफ माय फ्रेंड्स आई वांट टू बी अ पार्ट ऑफ अ बुक क्लब एंड वी विल रीड अ बुक एंड डिस्कस इट. So this book club group will be an example of informal group, and I will be very close to people in this group rather than a formal group. So that is the difference. The third type of group that we understand in this context or in this chapter is in-group and out-group. Now, what is the difference between these two kinds of group? Just as individuals compare themselves with others in terms of similarities and differences with respect to what they have and what others have, individuals also compare the group they belong to with groups of which they are not a member of. So what they are saying is जैसे हम अपने आप को as a person किसी और इंसान से compare करते हैं and we try to see what do we have, what do we lack. In the same manner हम अपने ग्रुप को दूसरों के ग्रुप से भी कंपेयर करते हैं. तो जिस ग्रुप का हम पार्ट होते हैं वो हमारा इन ग्रुप हो जाता है बिकॉज वी आर इन ऑन दैट ग्रुप. जिस ग्रुप का हम पार्ट नहीं होते हैं वो ग्रुप हमारा आउट ग्रुप कहलाता है क्योंकि हम उस ग्रुप का पार्ट नहीं है. सो द टर्म इन ग्रुप रेफर्स टू योर ओन ग्रुप, whereas out group refers to some other group. For in group members we use the word we, while for out group members we use the word they. Jab bhi if you're a part of a let's say basketball team, right, and this is you're a part of team A and there is team B, तो जब आप अपनी टीम के मेंबर्स को रेफर करते हो आप हमेशा वी यूज करते हो यानी हम, और जब हम किसी और के ग्रुप के लोगों की बात करते हैं हम हमेशा वो या दे यूज करते हैं बिकॉज वी ट्राई टू differentiate between this is who we are and this is who they are, right? So by using the words they and we, one is categorizing people as similar or different. It has been found that person in the in group are generally supposed to be similar, are viewed favorably and have desirable traits. हमेशा whenever there's a competition between the in group and the out group, आपको हमेशा ऐसा लगता है that our group is better than the other group. We favor people of our group. So this in group and out group could be caste, right? So if you're from one caste, all other castes will become out group. This could also be religion, or this could be also be whether it could be family or it could be country also. Sometimes if you go outside, how they talk that we Indians are like this and these Americans are like that, or any other XYZ countrymen. So we favor people from our groups and we feel that they have more desirable traits or they are better human beings than rest. So how do we view out group members? They are viewed as different and often perceived negatively in comparison to the in group members. We always feel that the member of our group are better than the members of the other group for some reason. Yeah. And perception of in group and out group affect our social life. Now, of course, how we perceive our in group and out group will also affect our social life and who we interact with. So these are the three kinds of group that we cover. Now, the next topic is how does these groups influence an individual's behavior? right? So the topic is influence of group on individual behavior. The whole purpose of studying this chapter or studying the group behavior is because जो भी group होता है वो आपके individual behavior को भी affect करता है, right? So we have seen that groups are powerful as they are able to influence behavior of individuals. Now, studying groups becomes very important because जो भी group है वो बहुत powerful होते हैं. If you're a part of a very powerful group, they can influence the way you're behaving. What is the nature of this influence? So, what is this influence though, right? What impact does the presence of others have on our performance? Now, इस case में we will discuss two situations. An individual performing an activity alone in the presence of others, यानी एक आप activity perform कर रहे हो अकेले in a situation where there are other people also present. And the other situation we will discuss is where the individual is performing an activity along with others as part of a larger group, where you are also a part of the activity, but there are also other people who are part of that activity with you. So the first situation is something we know as social facilitation, and the second situation is known as social loafing. Now, we have discussed social facilitation already in chapter 6, so we will not discuss it here, but we will understand the phenomena of social loafing. Social loafing. Now, social facilitation research suggests that presence of others leads to arousal and can motivate individuals to enhance their performance if they are already good at solving something. So, हमने social facilitation में क्या पढ़ा था कि जो बाकी लोगों की presence है, वो हमें और अच्छा perform करने पे वो कर सकती है. It could force us to perform better, or it could lead us to us performing better if we are already good at something, right? So this enhancement occurs when a person's efforts are individually evaluated, and this performance will only increase if I am being judged only for my performance, right? What will happen if efforts of an individual in a group are pooled so that you look at the performance of the group as a whole? So will this also happen if I am a part of a larger group? So will then also my performance increase or no, is what we are going to see. It has been found that individuals work less hard in a group than they do when performing alone. This is a very common phenomena. You tend to work more harder, you tend to perform better when you are judged for your performance. If you are judged along with the performance of others, then you tend to perform lesser, or you tend to work lesser, right? If it's a group evaluation and if it's not an individual evaluation. This points to a phenomena referred to social loafing. ये जो process है जहां हम, क्योंकि हम एक group का part है, इसलिए हम कम मेहनत कर रहे हैं या कम performance दे रहे हैं, this phenomena is known as social loafing. So how do we define this? Social loafing is a reduction in individuals' effort when working on a collective task. That is, one in which outputs are pooled with those of other group members. An example of such a task is game of tug of war. अगर 1 versus 1 गेम हो, आपको एक इंसान को खींचना है टग ऑफ वॉर में, तो आप ज्यादा मेहनत लगाओगे या ज्यादा एफर्ट लगाओगे. पर अगर if it's a tug of war where there are 10 people on each team, then sometimes you also put less effort because now it's a group or it's a team effort. So even if you don't win, you can blame the whole team, right? So therefore, social loafing leads to reduction of your individual effort when there are others present. It is not possible for you to identify how much force each member of the team has been exerting, because of course in a group you have no way of finding out कि किसने कितना मेहनत करी या how much effort did everyone put. So therefore, such situations give opportunity to group members to relax and become a free rider. This is very common when you're in school and if it's a group project. Sometimes if it would have been an individual project, you would have taken more interest or worked more hard. But if it's a group project, you're like, okay, baki sab kar lenge, and you just do a little bit and then you also get the same grade as the group. That also is what we know as social loafing, where you have just become a free rider of somebody else's effort or somebody else's success. This phenomena has been demonstrated in many experiments by Litane and his associates, who asked a group of male students to clap or cheer as loudly as possible, as they were interested in knowing how much noise people make in social setting. So there was a group of people, experimenters told them to clap as loudly as possible or make, cheer as loudly as possible. and they were a part of the group. They varied the group size, and what experimenters did, उन्होंने group size vary किया. तो कभी group छोटा था, कभी इंसान अकेला था, and sometimes the person was alone, sometimes he was a part of a group where there were just 2 members, there were 4 members, there were 6 members. So the result of this study shows that although जो total amount of noise है वो बढ़ा जैसे जैसे group size बढ़ा, पर individual का जो amount of noise produced था ना, like how much noise I was producing as a single person kept decreasing as the group size increased, right? So in other words, we can say that each participant put less effort as the number of people increased who were clapping, right? So again, an example of social loafing. Now, why does this happen, right? So does it happen that when we become a part of a social group or a bigger group, we start to loaf or we start to do social loafing? So these are some of the explanations that have been offered. Group members feel less responsible for the overall task being performed and therefore exert less effort. आपको ऐसा लगता है that this is just not now your responsibility and there are other people's as well, therefore you start putting some effort. Motivation of member decreases because they realize that their contribution will not be evaluated on individual basis. इंसानों की मोटिवेशन भी कम हो जाती है क्योंकि उन्हें ऐसा लगता है कि वो कितना भी एफर्ट डाल ले, उन्हें पर्सनली इंडिविजुअली तो इवैल्यूएट नहीं किया जाएगा, right? So therefore their motivation decreases. The performance of the group is not to be compared with other groups. This is no competition. या आपकी कोई performance compare नहीं हो रही है किसी और के ग्रुप से, इसलिए भी आप कई बार कम एफर्ट डालते हो. There is an improper coordination or no coordination among group. कई बार ऐसा होता है कि आपका coordination ही नहीं बना, इसलिए फिर आपने less effort डाला. Belonging to same group is not important for members. अगर आपके लिए उस ग्रुप का पार्ट होना इतना इंपॉर्टेंस नहीं रखता है तो भी आप क्या करोगे? You will put less effort. If that group is very important for you and being a part of that group is important for you, then of course the amount of effort you will put will be significant. But if it's not important, then your effort would lack. Now, what can we do to reduce this, right? So social loafing may be reduced by making the efforts of each person identifiable. You have to find a way to evaluate people so that उन हर इंसान का जो effort है वो आप अकेले identify कर पाओ. Increasing the pressure to work hard. You have to motivate people or you have to kind of put task in a manner which increases the pressure to work hard. Increasing the apparent importance of value or task. तो आपको ये clearly mention करना पड़ेगा that this task is very important and everybody has to put equal and extra efforts for this. Making people feel that the individual contribution is important. You can also highlight that each vote counts or each clap counts. So highlighting an individual contribution will also lead to increase in effort by people. Strengthening group cohesiveness, which increases the motivation for successful group outcome. जितना आपके ग्रुप में ज्यादा मिलन होगा या जितना आपका ग्रुप will be more in touch with each other, will like each other, the more there will be more motivation to perform better as a group. So these are all the things you can do to reduce social loafing. Group polarization. We all know that important decisions are taken by groups and not by individuals alone. Now, this often happens that, whenever you are deciding something which is very important, most likely you will feel that there's a group which is responsible for making that important decision, right? So, for example, a decision is to be taken whether a school has to be established in a village. Such a decision has to be a group decision. हमेशा अगर आप गांव में भी देखोगे तो कोई भी important फैसला लेना होता है तो पंचायत फैसला लेती है. There are more than one people there who decide whether this should be done or not. We have also seen that when groups take decision, there is a fear that the phenomena of groupthink may sometimes occur. बहुत बार ऐसा होता है जब एक group फैसला लेता है तो something that we know as groupthink happens, right? Groupthink is something that we are going to see. Groups show another tendency referred to as group polarization. It has been found that group are more likely to take extreme decisions than individual alone. बहुत बार ऐसा होता है कि अगर एक group फैसला ले रहा है तो there is more chances that they will take an extreme decision, whether it is extremely positive or extremely negative, whichever way the group flows, but the tendency to take a more extreme decision increases in a group setting. This is something which we know as group polarization. यानी आपका group एक तरफ बिल्कुल चला गया, चाहे वो पॉजिटिव में था चाहे वो नेगेटिव में था, whether it was in the favor of the matter or it was against the matter, but there's a tendency to have an extreme decision. Suppose there is an employee who has been caught taking bribe or engaging in some other unethical act. मान लो आपका एक ऐसा एम्प्लॉय है जो स्टील करते हुए पकड़ा गया या ब्राइब लेते हुए पकड़ा गया. Her or his colleagues are asked to decide on what punishment she or he should be given, and his colleagues are asked कि उसको कैसे पनिश करना चाहिए. They may let him or her go scot free or decide to terminate his or her services. अब इनका चांसेस ज्यादा ही होगा, या तो दे विल आस्क देम कि ओके माफ कर दो, या फिर उसको टर्मिनेट कर दो, या उसे रिजाइन करा दो, राइट, और आइदर फायर हिम. इन दोनों डिसीजंस की प्रोबेबिलिटी ज्यादा है इन कंपैरिजन टू जस्ट इम्पोजिंग अ फाइन और अ पनिशमेंट व्हिच मे बी unethical, which will be equal to what he has done, right? So because now the group was responsible, so there's a more chance that there will be an extreme decision which will come in. Whatever the initial position in the group, this position becomes much stronger as a result of discussion in the group. जो भी पहला आइडिया ग्रुप में प्रेजेंट कर दिया जाता है, लोग अगर उसके फेवर में जाते जाते हैं तो वो बहुत फेवर में चले जाते हैं, या फिर अगर अगेंस्ट जाते जाते हैं तो बिल्कुल नेगेटिव हो जाते हैं, राइट? एंड this strengthens the group's initial position as a result of group interaction, and discussion is referred to as group polarization. This process where the initial discussion became an extreme decision becomes group polarization. This may sometimes have dangerous repercussions as group may take extreme positions from very weak to very strong decisions. Therefore, we say that as an individual, you take a more, intermediate decision than a group. Therefore, sometimes not letting the group decide can also be a good choice. Now, why does this group polarization occur? ऐसा होता क्यों है कि लोग ग्रुप का पार्ट होने के बाद बहुत एक्सट्रीम फैसलों तक ले जाते हैं उस ग्रुप को? Now, let us take an example whether capital punishment should be there. Suppose you favor capital punishment for heinous crimes. What would happen if you were interacting with and discussing this issue with like-minded people? अगर आप किसी ग्रुप को, आप किसी टॉपिक को फेवर करते हैं, right? For example, let me say if I favor nuclear bombing, just hypothetically, right? And if I'm interacting with like-minded people, right, and they also think in the same manner, then we, as a result of the discussion or as a result of what we've discussed, we might lead to actually, we can completely go in the favor of nuclear bombing, right? Because we're all like-minded and nobody is objecting to this. So in this case, suppose if you're favor the capital punishment for heinous crimes and you're discussing this with like-minded people, आफ्टर दिस इंटरेक्शन आपके व्यू जो है वो और स्ट्रॉन्ग हो जाएंगे उस चीज के बारे में. दिस फर्म कन्विक्शन इज बिकॉज ऑफ द फॉलोइंग 3 रीजन. ये होता क्यों है, वाई आपका और जो व्यू है वो स्ट्रॉन्ग क्यों होता है? बिकॉज देयर आर 3 रीजंस बिहाइंड दिस. फर्स्ट, if the company of like-minded people, in the company of like-minded people, you are likely to hear newer arguments favoring your viewpoint. क्योंकि आप अपने लाइक माइंडेड लोगों के उसमें हो, तो जो आपका ऑलरेडी डिसीजन है आप उसी के फेवर में और नए नए आर्ग्यूमेंट्स और नए नए पॉइंट सुनोगे. आपको ऐसा लगेगा कि हाँ, जो आप ऑलरेडी ओपिनियन होल्ड करते थे वो बहुत वैलिड है ना, आपका वो ओपिनियन और स्ट्रांग होगा. When you find others also favoring capital punishment, you feel that this view is validated by public. जब आपको लगता है आपके अलावा इतने सारे लोग भी उस चीज के फेवर में हैं, तो आपको लगता है this is something that the public does want and the public validates. This is like a bandwagon effect. So अगर आपके आगे 10 लोग फेवर कर रहे हैं, आप अज्यूम करोगे कि बाकी और भी ऐसे बहुत सारे लोग होंगे जो इसे फेवर करते होंगे. Third point, when you find people having similar views, you are likely to perceive them as in group. जैसे ही आपको लगता है कि कोई ऐसे लोग हैं जिनका आपके जैसा व्यू है, आप उन्हें अपने ग्रुप का हिस्सा समझने लग जाते हो. You can start considering them in group and you start identifying with that group, begin showing conformity, and as a consequence your views become strengthened. So because of all these reasons, if you discuss a topic in a group and all of them are like-minded people, your opinion about that particular group can become about that particular topic that you were discussing can become even more strengthened and more extreme. Now we come to the topic of conformity, compliance, and obedience. This is a very important topic for this chapter. Now, like we know that groups and individuals exert influence on us, like the group that we are a part of or the individuals around us do impact or do have an influence over our behavior, right? and this influence may force us to change our behavior in a particular direction. कई बार ऐसा भी होता है that you change your behavior or you change your decision depending on who talks to you, right? Or if your family is trying to influence your direction, your decision, then sometimes it does lead to you changing your behavior or you changing your decision. The term social influence refers to those processes whereby our attitude and behavior are influenced by the real or imagined presence of other people. So social influence उसी term का नाम है जो process ये बताती है कि क्योंकि हमें ऐसा लगता है that we have a there are people who are present around us and therefore we change our behavior. This is known as social influence, and this is a very common part of each and everybody's part of life, right? In some situations, social influence on us is very strong, as a result of which we tend to do things which we otherwise would have not done. कई बार ऐसा होता है कि जो आपका जो सोशल इन्फ्लुएंस है वो इतना ज्यादा स्ट्रांग होता है कि कई बार आप ऐसी चीजें भी करते हो जो आप अदरवाइज शायद अकेले में नहीं करते, राइट? On other occasions, we are able to defy influence of others and may even influence them to adapt our own viewpoint. On the other hand, कई सिचुएशन ऐसी भी होती हैं जहाँ पे ना आप इन्फ्लुएंस होते हो बल्कि आप अगले को इन्फ्लुएंस कर देते हो, and you influence them to adapt your lifestyle or your way of thinking. So we will study three important group influence processes, which are conformity, compliance, and obedience. तो जो सबसे तीन important social influence की processes हैं वो हैं conformity, compliance, and obedience, और हम तीनों ही इस chapter में पढ़ेंगे. Now imagine the following situation in your school. Some of your friends come to you with a letter of protest against a rule that has been recently announced. कुछ आपके फ्रेंड्स स्कूल में आपके पास आते हैं और आपको बोलते हैं कि आपको ये लेटर साइन करना है और दिस लेटर इज अगेंस्ट अ रूल जो अभी भी स्कूल में पास हुआ है. और वो रूल क्या है कि स्कूल में मोबाइल फोन यूज नहीं होना चाहिए, राइट? अब पर्सनली आपको ऐसा लगता है, पर्सनली यू बिलीव दैट द रूल इज वेरी सेंसिबल एंड शुड बी इन्फोर्स्ड. आपका पर्सनल ओपिनियन ये है कि जो रूल है वो बहुत सेंसिबल है और वो इन्फोर्स होना चाहिए. But you also know that if you do not sign the letter, you will lose many friends and get a bad name for not keeping student unity. But sometimes it happens that you don't want to say no also to such a request because you feel that a lot of friends will get disappointed or will get upset with you, and they might say that you are not somebody who is in the favor of student unity. So what will you do in such a situation? What do you think most people of your age would do, right? So if this is a particular situation, what do you think? How will you behave? What will your decision be? And what will most of the people your age in this particular situation will do? If your answer is that you would agree to sign the letter, you have expressed a form of social influence called conformity. अगर आपको ऐसा लगता है कि आप खुद का पर्सनल ओपिनियन आपका ये है कि ये सही रूल है, फिर भी अगर आप वो लेटर साइन कर दोगे, इसका मतलब आप सोशली इन्फ्लुएंस हो गए हो, और इस प्रोसेस को हम कहते हैं कंफर्मिटी, जिसका क्या मतलब है कि आपने ग्रुप नॉर्म के हिसाब से बिहेव किया. दैट इज एक्सपेक्टेशंस ऑफ अदर ग्रुप मेंबर्स. यू हैव tried to meet the expectations that they have from you, even if you don't agree with the thing, right? And this is the process of conformity, right? Because you don't want to be the odd one out and you don't want to upset your friends, therefore you just went with the flow. Now people who do not conform, जो लोग ऐसी सिचुएशन में कंफर्म नहीं करते हैं या फिर सोशल नॉर्म्स से एग्री नहीं करते हैं, and they do not sign the letter, they are known as deviants or non-conformist, and they get noticed more than those people who conform. Now Kelman distinguished three forms of social influence, that is compliance, identification, and internalization, right? Compliance क्या होता है? In compliance, there are external conditions that force the individual to accept the influence of the significant other. Compliance में ऐसा होता है कि एक कोई ऐसी external condition होती है जो individual को force करती है वो influence accept करने के लिए. Now, compliance also refers to behaving in a particular way in response to a request made by someone. So you are behaving in a particular fashion. Why? Because somebody has requested you to do something. Thus, in the example described above, you may sign the letter with the thought that you were accepting the request, not because you agree with other students. बहुत अगर आपका thought process ये है कि आप सिर्फ उनकी request मान रहे हो, and you're signing the letter because they've requested you, and you're not signing it because you agree with them, then this will fall under your compliance. So if you were accepting the request not because you agree with other students but because you have been requested to do so by a significant member, this would be a case of compliance, also called external or public conformity, right? Now compliance could take place even without a norm. कई बार ऐसा भी होता है कि हम वैसे भी comply कर जाते हैं even if there's no norm or there's no rule or there's no standard guide. For example, a member of a community group for clean environment request you to put a sticker on your bike that reads say no to plastic bags. अगर आपके पास आपकी कोई कम्युनिटी का मेंबर आया है जो क्लीन एनवायरनमेंट के लिए आपको रिक्वेस्ट कर रहा है कि आप अपनी बाइक पे स्टिकर लगा लो which says say no to plastic bags. Sometimes no, we are not saying yes to this because other people are also saying yes. We say yes because we feel okay that this is good for the environment and there is no harm in doing this also. So you agree to do this not because of a group norm or even because you personally believe in banning plastic bags. So you agree to do so not because of a group norm. You're not doing this because every other member of the group is doing this or because you are believing in this. आप इसलिए भी नहीं कर रहे हो because आप इस चीज में believe करते हो. But because you see no harm or problem in putting such a sticker, you're only doing this because you feel that there's no harm in doing this, whether I believe this in this or not. But चलो क्या ही फर्क पड़ता है. At the same time, you find it easier to say yes, also because saying no would be more difficult than saying yes to a request. And this is also harmless, right? Therefore, you comply. Now, identification according to Kelman refer to influence process based on agreement seeking or identity seeking. Identification मतलब जब आप agree भी करते हो किसी की चीज से और इसलिए आप influence हो गए. Internalization, on the other hand, is a process based on information seeking. Internalization is more involved where you seek information and then you kind of decide. There's another form of behavior which is obedience, right? And a distinguishing feature of obedience is that such behavior is a response to a person in authority. Obedience मतलब हमारा behavior तब influence होता है जब कोई इंसान जो authority पे है या उसके पास कोई power है उसके position की वजह से हम उसकी बात सुन रहे हैं, ठीक है? जैसे बहुत बार ऐसा होता है कि अगर कोई यही same letter आपके पास कोई senior teacher लेकर आएगी तो आप बहुत जल्दी sign कर दोगे in comparison to if it's a friend. Why? Because the teacher has a certain authority, right? And in this situation, you're not following a group norm, but rather you're carrying out an instruction or an order which is there from an authority. The presence of an authority figure immediately makes this behavior different from conformity. The moment there's an authority figure present, this behavior becomes very different from what we call conformity. Conformity is only when you have no pressure from any authority or you have no other external factor involved, but you're only saying yes because you want to conform or you want to be liked by the people of that group. So here, for instance, you may stop talking loudly in the classroom when the teacher asks you to keep quiet, but not when your classmate tells you to do the same thing. अगर आपको class में teacher बोलती है कि शांत रहो, तो you keep quiet. But if there's a friend who tells you कि please चुप हो जाओ, I am getting disturbed, and you're not listening to that friend, then you're not conforming, but you're being obedient. So you're abiding your teacher who is in a place of authority. Now we can see that there are some similarities between conformity, compliance, and obedience, but there are also some differences. So these three terms can sometimes seem a little too similar, but there's a clear distinction which exists between all of these three. All three indicate the influence of others on an individual's behavior. Similarity क्या है कि तीनों ही ये बात करती हैं कि किसी social influence कैसे हमारे behavior को change करता है. Now, obedience is the most direct and explicit form of social influence. Why? Because there's a person in authority who's asking you to change your behavior. Whereas compliance is less direct than obedience because someone has requested and thus you comply. So obedience is most direct, compliance is less direct. Conformity is the most or the least indirect form, right? So you are conforming because you do not want to deviate from the norm. So that is the difference. Obedience मतलब आप इंसान की बात इसलिए मान रहे हो क्योंकि वो एक अथॉरिटी फिगर है. आप कंप्लायंस इसलिए कर रहे हो या आप इसलिए किसी की बात मान रहे हो क्योंकि वो आपको रिक्वेस्ट कर रहा है. कंफॉर्मिटी मतलब ना कोई अथॉरिटी में ना है ना कोई रिक्वेस्ट कर रहा है. और ओनली saying yes to somebody because you want to be a part of that group and you want to conform or you want to be a part of people of the majority, right? So now we'll look into conformity more. The tendency to follow a norm is natural and does not need any special explanation, right? So this conformity is something which comes very naturally to us, right? And this is something which does not need any specific explanation. First, norms represent a set of unwritten and informal rules of behavior that provide information to members of a group about what is expected of them in specific situation. हम नॉर्म क्यों फॉलो करते हैं? क्योंकि नॉर्म हमें ऐसी सेट ऑफ रूल्स या ऐसी सेट ऑफ गाइडलाइंस बताता है जो हमसे एक्सपेक्टेड है ऑफ हाउ वी आर सपोज टू बिहेव. दिस मेक्स द होल सिचुएशन क्लियरर and allow both the individual and the group to function more smoothly, right? These norms or these rules of what's expected from us makes the whole functioning of the group as well as ours a little easier and a little simple. Second, in general, people feel comfortable if they are considered different from others. So secondly, people feel very uncomfortable if they are considered different from the majority. So therefore also we conform. Behaving in a way that differs from the expected form of behavior may lead to disapproval or dislikes by others. जैसे मान लो अगर आप कुछ ऐसे आप differently behave करते हो of how the society expects you to behave, then it makes you feel as if people will dislike you or disapprove of you, which is a form of social punishment. And this is something which is not liked by us as humans because we feel that this is a way of socially punishing us. This is something that most people fear, often in an imagined way. This is something we fear so much that हम सोच के भी हमें ऐसा लगता है that okay, no. So you will not see any girl going to a wedding wearing a jeans and a top, right? In an Indian setup. Why? Because the society expects them to be all decked out. And even if you don't feel like dressing up as a girl, you have to dress up if you have to go to a wedding, because then you feel like what will people think and what will people say. So that is also how there's a social influence which is there, even in an imagination in your head. So recall the question we ask so often: what will people then say? Log kya kahenge ya tab log kya bolenge? This is also an example of social influence. So following the norm is thus the simplest way of avoiding disapproval and obtaining approval from others. तो जो सब कर रहे हैं वही करना बहुत आसान हो जाता है, and this becomes very natural and very easy for us, and therefore we start conforming. Next, the norm is seen as reflecting the views and belief of the majority. जो ज्यादातर लोग कर रहे होते हैं वो एक majority का viewpoint या majority की thinking मानी जाती है. Most people believe that the majority is more likely to be right than wrong. And हम ये समझते हैं कि जो majority कर रही है वो सही कर रही होगी, right? Because there's so many people can't be wrong. An instance of this is often observed in quiz shows on television. When a contestant is at loss for the correct answer to a question, she may opt for an audience opinion. जैसे कौन बनेगा करोड़पति में जो audience poll है ना? That is what you ask the majority, you ask the people, audience who's sitting there कि इस क्वेश्चन का क्या आंसर है, एंड जो मेजोरिटी बोलती है आप वो चूज करते हो. बट समटाइम्स द आंसर गिवन बाय मेजोरिटी कैन आल्सो बी रॉन्ग, right? So it doesn't prove that the majority is always right, but we believe that majority will be right, or should be right. By the same reasoning, people conform to the norm because they believe that majority must be right. इसीलिए हम जो ज्यादातर लोग करते हैं वैसी ही चीजें करते रहते हैं in life, because we feel that what everybody is doing should be the correct choice to do. So next topic is determinants of conformity. The first factor which determines whether we will conform is the size of the group. It has been found that conformity is greater when the group is small than when the group is large. ऐसा पाया गया कि जब आप छोटे ग्रुप का हिस्सा होते हैं तब आप ज्यादा ग्रुप का नॉर्म फॉलो करते हैं in comparison to larger group. Why does this happen? क्योंकि छोटे ग्रुप में आइडेंटिफाई कर पाना बहुत आसान है कि किसने फॉलो नहीं किया या कौन who is the one who is not going according to what should be the norm. On the other hand, in a larger group, it is still easier because you will not be identified in a very large group. But still, the pressure to conform is larger in a larger group, right? Now, size of the minority also makes a factor, like also determines whether you will conform or not. When the dissenting or deviating minority size increases, the likelihood of conformity decreases. जैसे जैसे minority का size बढ़ता जाएगा या ऐसे लोगों का group बढ़ता जाएगा जो अब कंफर्म नहीं कर रहे हैं, वैसे वैसे ऐसे लोगों का साइज भी बढ़ता जाएगा. सपोज इफ देयर इज अ ग्रुप इन व्हिच वन पीपल डिसएग्रीज, one person also then starts to disagree, then people who disagree will keep increasing, right? So in fact, it may increase the number of descendants or non-conformists in the group. तो जैसे जैसे माइनॉरिटी का ग्रुप मेजोरिटी में बढ़ेगा, वैसे वैसे और ज्यादा लोग माइनॉरिटी को ज्वाइन करते जाएंगे. थर्ड फैक्टर जो डिटरमाइन करता है whether they will be conforming or not is the nature of the task. So task का क्या नेचर है? Suppose the task involves giving an opinion about some topic. अगर ऐसा टास्क है जहाँ पे आपको कोई ओपिनियन देना है किसी टॉपिक में, जहाँ पे कोई करेक्ट या इनकरेक्ट रिस्पॉन्स नहीं है, सिर्फ आप अपना ओपिनियन दे रहे हो, ऐसी सिचुएशन में कंफर्मिटी कम होगी, राइट? पर अगर ऐसा क्वेश्चन है जहां आपको ट्रू या फॉल्स बोलना है या सही या गलत ठहराना है किसी को, ऐसे केस में कंफर्मिटी ज्यादा होगी. सो कंफर्मिटी वुड बी लेस likely in the second scenario. Second scenario meaning where you can give a opinion which there is no right and wrong. Public और प्राइवेट एक्सप्रेशन ऑफ बिहेवियर. अब आपको अपना जो बिहेवियर है या जो अपना एक्सप्रेस करना है, अपना बिहेवियर ओपिनियन, वो पब्लिकली करना है या प्राइवेटली करना है, इससे भी कन्फर्मिटी में बहुत फर्क पड़ता है. अगर आप वोटिंग करने जा रहे हो और आप किसको वोट दोगे किसी को नहीं पता चलेगा, तो आपके कन्फर्मिंग के चांसेस कम है. पर अगर जो आप किसका साइड ले रहे हो वो सब देख पा रहे हैं, तो आपका कंफर्म करने का चांस बढ़ जाता है. सो इफ इट इज पब्लिक, यू विल मोर लाइकली बी कंफर्मिंग. If you're doing it in private, then हो सकता है you will not confirm and you will go by what you really feel. Fifth point is personality, right? So personality also plays a factor. Some people are more conformist in nature. कई लोगों की personality ही ऐसी होती है कि वो majority follow करना चाहते हैं. Such people have a tendency to change their behavior according to what others say or do in most situations. By contrast, there are individuals who are independent and who do not look for a norm in order to decide how to behave. There are also people who really don't, it really doesn't matter to them कि majority क्या सोच रही है या बाकी लोग क्या सोच रहे हैं. They go by what they think and it doesn't bother them if they are not liked by other people or if they don't follow the group norm, right? So research shows that highly intelligent people who are confident of themselves, they don't conform easily, and people who have low self-esteem or who are not as intelligent are the ones who conform more easily. The next we come into is compliance. So it was stated earlier that compliance refers simply to behaving in response to a request from another person or group, even in the absence of a norm. Compliance, जैसे हमने पहले discuss किया, it's a behavior where you're responding to a request from someone and there is no kind of norm which is present. A good example of compliance is the kind of behavior shown when a salesperson comes to our door. राइट? तो कई बार अगर कोई इंसान आपके घर पे आया है एंड इफ द पर्सन रिक्वेस्ट यू टू गिव द पर्सन वाटर, ऑफ कोर्स यू विल कंप्लाई, है ना? आप उसे पानी दे दोगे क्योंकि द पर्सन हैज रिक्वेस्टेड यू टू. इन द सेम मैनर, इफ देयर इज अ सेल्स पर्सन who's come to you and the person gives you a free sample, you will take it, right? The person is requesting you to try out their sample, you will take it. So that also is compliance. Now, in many situations, this happens because it is an easy way out of the situation. It is more polite and the other party is pleased. आप क्यों comply करते हो? कई बार because it is easy to do this. If somebody is requesting something which is harmless, it becomes more polite to accept it and अगला इंसान भी खुश हो जाता है. In other situations, there could be other factors at work. बाकी ऐसी बहुत scenarios हैं जहाँ हो सकता है कोई और factor role play कर रहा है. The following techniques have been found to work when someone wants another person to comply. अब ये जो है ना, like this factor where we want to please the other person, this has been exploited by a lot of businesses like advertising, marketing. बहुत exploit करते हैं वो human behavior को जहाँ पे we want to make somebody happy. And these are some of the techniques that they use. So the first technique is foot in the door technique. Second is the deadline technique. Third is the door in the face technique. So these are the three techniques that people use to make us comply to their request, right? First is the foot in the door technique. The person begins by making a small request that the other person is not likely to refuse. पहले आप क्या करते हो? It's like बड़े दरवाजे में पैर अड़ाना. मतलब पहले आप छोटी सी request करोगे, right? That is your foot. You have inserted your foot, and this request will be something which the person will not be able to refuse. Something very small. जैसे ही इंसान ने भी ये छोटी रिक्वेस्ट मान ली, आप कोई बड़ी रिक्वेस्ट करोगे. होता क्या है, जब इंसान ने आपकी पहली रिक्वेस्ट एक्सेप्ट कर ली है तो उसके चांसेस दूसरी रिक्वेस्ट भी एक्सेप्ट करने के बढ़ जाते हैं, राइट? एंड द पर्सन सेज फील्स दैट ओके, मैंने एक बार तो रिक्वेस्ट एक्सेप्ट कर ली, चलो दूसरी बार भी कर ही लेता हूँ. So simply because the other person has already complied with the smaller request, he or she may feel uncomfortable refusing to the second request. So that is what is foot in the door technique. So you've slided in by making a small request, and then you've opened the whole door by making a bigger request, right? So this is the foot in the door technique. Second is the deadline technique. This is very common. This we all know. In this technique, a last date is announced until which a particular product or an offer will be available. You know how you go to stores and they tell you 50% off till 31st December. उन्होंने एक डेडलाइन रख दी, तो जो आपका चांस है उस टाइम वो चीज खरीदने का वो बढ़ जाता है अगर डेडलाइन है. If there is no deadline, then your chances of buying it reduces, right? So the aim is to make people hurry. It's basically to hurry your behavior to buy and make the purchase before they miss the rare opportunity. It is more likely that people will buy a product under this deadline condition than it is if there is no such deadline. अगर आपने सिर्फ लिखा हुआ है 50% off, people will buy, but the chances of most of the people buying will be lesser. If you write 50% off till 31st December, the chances of people hurrying up for buying increases. So that is another technique which makes us comply to somebody's, what they wish to. The third is door in the face technique, right? In this technique, you begin with a large request. आप क्या करते हो? आप पहले ही सबसे बड़ी request present कर देते हो, ठीक है? और आपको पता है ये request मना की जाएगी. And when this is refused, a later request for something smaller, the one that was actually desired, is made. So, for example, if you want a bigger request to be fulfilled, जैसे for example आप अपने पेरेंट्स को बोलो कि पापा मुझे महंगा सा लैपटॉप दिला दो, आपको पता है वो इस चीज को मना करेंगे, दे विल से नो. फिर आप बोलोगे अच्छा चलो लैपटॉप नहीं दिला सकते तो कम से कम एक फोन तो दिला दो, सो दिस इज व्हाट यू एक्चुअली वांटेड. आपको चाहिए फोन ही था, पर आपने पहले बड़ी डिमांड की, पेरेंट्स ने मना कर दिया, तो आपने बोला अच्छा चलो ये नहीं तो ये तो कर दो. So this is your technique of making the other person listen to your request of a phone, right? So this is what we know as door in the face technique, where you first present a bigger request. Once it is refused, you present the actual request that you want to be fulfilled by the person. Their chances of accepting your request actually increases, right? So that is what we do in compliance. Now we come to obedience. Now, when compliance is shown to an instruction or an order from a person in authority, such as parents, teachers, leaders, or policemen, that behavior is called obedience. जब हम किसी की बात इसलिए मान रहे हैं कि वो किसी यूनिफॉर्म में है या वो किसी की पोजीशन पे है, उसे हम इस बिहेवियर को हम obedience कहते हैं. Now, why people show obedience is easy to understand. हम क्यों obide करते हैं किसी को, बहुत phenomena बहुत easy है in understanding. Most often it is because if we disobey, some punishment might follow. कई बार ऐसा होता है हम इसलिए follow करते हैं because अगर हम नहीं follow करेंगे तो there can be a punishment which will come. Now sometimes it is because हमें ऐसा लगता है कि जो भी इंसान authority में है उसे सुनना चाहिए, ठीक है? People in authority have effective means for enforcing their orders. आप अगर पुलिस पे रोड खड़ी होती है, traffic police, and they tell you that this road is blocked, and if they say you have to go that way, you do follow it because that's a person in uniform and they have a certain authority. अगर कोई सिविलियन खड़ा होगा तो probably you will not listen or you will not abide, right? Milgram conducted an experiment to show that individuals obey commands from people who are strangers. अब अगर उन्होंने this was an experimenter who showed कि आप command कर लेते हो follow अगर even from people who are strangers if they are in a position of authority, and this is what we will look at. The experimenter informed the respondents in the study that they were participating in an experiment to study the effect of punishment on learning. So the setup was such कि experimenter ने बोला कि जो participants हैं वो कैसे experiment का part है जहाँ पे effect of punishment देख रहे हैं learning पे. The experiment was conducted on pairs. मतलब दो लोग चाहिए थे हर experiment के लिए, एक जिसको punishment मिलेगी, एक जो punishment देगा. One person is in each pair was the learner. यानी एक में हर इंसान in the pair where there are two people, one is the learner जिसको he has to memorize certain words. The other participant was the teacher who would read these words aloud and punish the learner if the learner made some errors. मतलब there are two people, one is the teacher, one is the learner. Learner को कुछ words याद करने हैं, टीचर पहले वो वर्ड्स बोलेगा, अगर बच्चा याद कर पाया तो ठीक है, लर्नर याद कर पाया तो ठीक है, अगर नहीं तो द टीचर विल पनिश द चाइल्ड. The learner would make errors according to pre-arranged instruction. आपने लर्नर को ऑलरेडी बोला हुआ है कि उसे ये प्रॉब्लम्स उसे ये एरर बनाने हैं या उसे ये एरर्स कमिट करने हैं. आपको क्या देखना है that will this teacher give punishment to the learner because she's being asked to by you, right? So you are the person in authority and you are seeing whether the teacher will abide to your request to shock someone or to punish someone. Punishment है क्या? टीचर को ऐसा लगता है कि उसे शॉक देना है स्टूडेंट को. वैसे स्टूडेंट को शॉक मिलता नहीं है, बट द टीचर फील्स दैट ही और शी इज शॉकिंग द स्टूडेंट. अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल डू अबाइड टू दिस. मतलब जब उन्हें पता है कि वो किसी को दर्द भी दे रहे हैं तो भी 65% पीपल showed obedience, only a few did not show, right? So that is our likelihood to abide to somebody who is in authority. Now why do people obey even when they know that their behavior is harming others? क्यों ऐसा होता है कि लोग फिर भी abide करते हैं जब उन्हें पता चलता है कि even if what they are doing is actually harming the other person? Psychologists have identified several reasons for this. कुछ ऐसे reasons हैं which are listed below. People obey because they feel that they are not responsible for their own actions. लोगों को ऐसा लगता है कि वो अपने actions के लिए खुद responsible नहीं है, उन्हें कोई और कह रहा है, and they are simply following the orders given by someone else. Authority generally possess symbol of status which people find difficult to resist. The higher the authority, the more difficult it becomes for a person to actually resist the request or resist the order. Authority gradually increases command from lesser to greater levels and initial obedience binds the follower for commitment. पहले जो अथॉरिटी है वो ऐसा रिक्वेस्ट कर रही है जो ओके है फॉलो करने में, धीरे धीरे वो अपनी वो बढ़ा रही है, एंड देन यू वंस यू ओबे द फर्स्ट फ्यू वंस और यू अबाइड द फर्स्ट फ्यू वंस, you also abide the next ones. Many times events are moving at such a fast speed, for example in a right situation, that one has no time to think, just obey orders from above. कई बार ऐसा भी होता है कि जो सिचुएशन है वो इतनी जल्दी जल्दी हो रही है that you really don't have time to think as to what you're doing. You just do what somebody in a place of authority is asking you to do. So that is another reason why you obey. That is all that we will do in this particular part of this chapter in this video. The rest of the chapter will be covered in part 3 in the upcoming week. In case you have any questions, any comments, any doubts, anything, any feedback that you want to give, you are more than welcome to leave your comments below this video. The notes for this video as well will go on the Google Drive. How you can access this PPT, you can refer to the video where I've listed that, how you can download class 12 notes. If possible, I'll also link it here so that you can download the notes of this chapter once we finish the chapter, right? So I'll just reiterate, in case you have any questions, any doubt, do leave your comments. I hope you're liking our videos. We are putting a lot of effort and a lot of time in making these videos. I know your exams are approaching and we will finish the syllabus before March, so don't worry about that. But in case you have any question, any feedback you would like to leave for me, please go ahead and do that. And I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care.